Hi guys, I am Dr. Amy Nelson. I'm a naturopathic doctor in Austin, Texas, and today we're going to talk about calming down. So, I don't know if you need to calm down, but let's talk about kind of how to do that and what goes on when we're not calm, and let's just talk about all of it, right? Because right now is kind of a busy time of year. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of things we have to get done. There's a lot of things we're preparing for. So the nervous system itself, we've got parasympathetic, and we have the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight, and it means it's an activating nervous system. It's named sympathetic based upon the anatomy physiology of the spine. And sympathetic, I know, means like, I'm sympathetic for your emotions. That's not the same word. It's just named for the anatomy physiology of where it's located in the spine. Parasympathetic is actually the rest and digest system, right? So we've got a stimulatory nervous system and we have a relaxation nervous system. The default nervous system for the human body is basically sympathetic nervous system. And that makes sense, right? Because let's say you don't want to have to think about running from a tiger or running from danger. It just kind of defaults to that sympathetic response. So we are kind of constantly training up our parasympathetic nervous system. And we have capability, everybody has capability and power to do that, okay? So the deep part of the lungs, that's the great overdrive for the sympathetic nervous system. And as long as you are breathing, you can control your nervous system, okay? I know it feels like you can't sometimes, and I know that and that's part of it, right? The sympathetic nervous system is like run from danger. And I always picture, well, this has happened in real life too, where I've tried to capture, let's say, a little dog running down the side of a road, right? And you've got this scared little dog and he's just running down the side of a road and he's running maybe even into the road, kind of dodging traffic. And you're like, oh my goodness, must save the dog, right? And yes, I would be that person who would run into the street to save the dog or the cat or whatever animal. Yes, has happened. In fact, multiple times. In fact, probably has happened so many times I've kind of forgotten about the times it's happened. Anyway, you know who you are. If you are those people that like run into the street to save the animal, I hear you. Anyway, so it's kind of like when you are, that nervous system can be that little dog running down the street, right? And what is happening to the little dog? You're running after it going like, stop, stop, stop. I want you to stop. You're in danger, right? And, or there's those, running down the street going, I'm trying to love you. Be my pet, Anyway, but the dog is really just like, he's just crazed. He's just in his flight brain. He's trying to save his own life, right? He's running down the street. Does it make sense to him to stop and listen to you? Absolutely not. In fact, he's just, not going to do that, right? So there are times when our nervous system is the little dog running down the street. And then there's times that our nervous system is the person trying to help the dog down the street, right? So we've got the fight or flight, and then we've got the parasympathetic. So what happens to us when we're not really running down a street, dodging into traffic? I hope not anyway. What our running down the street kind of looks like is we pull it up here. We pull it up into the brain and we start to ruminate. What if? Overthink, right? We're running up here, aren't we? And it's triggering and it's hard to get out of that. It's hard to kind of, it's hard to be in that space, right? Because think of how exhausting it is to have that anxious tone going on and that sympathetic nervous system being just flared up. Now, is the sympathetic nervous system unreasonable? No. That little dog running down that street, you don't know what he's been through and you don't know why he's doing that. But he is in survival mode, and the survival mode right now is really dominant. So if a lot of times when we're doing that thing in our brain, we're running down the street in our brain, a lot of times people might have a huge history of being traumatized or surviving something very, very stressful, or their experiences in their world have really triggered up the sympathetic tone. And that means that they still might be learning how to trust this world or learning how to calm the system down. But right now it's just not there yet, you know? And so what happens is if you were to say to somebody who is like, say, overthinking, let's say a friend comes to you and they're just in this state of analysis paralysis, or they're in this state of fear, or they're in this state of overthinking, we kind of go into fix-it mode, right? Because it's hard to see somebody in a state of pain and we want to do something to get them out of that. So we're like, try this, try that, go see this person, go see that person. You know what I mean? We're trying to offer up solutions, but really as human beings, it's really nice to just, I see how scared you are. It's just nice to sit in that moment of fear and realize that that's okay. Like, you can still be scared and okay. And that's hard because that's the vulnerability. That's probably what that person, or what we as a society don't allow each other very much, is to be afraid, or to be in an emotion that's not desirable, but be okay still, And so what happens is, really to kind of learn that you're observing an emotion with somebody, you're giving feedback, you're witnessing somebody's emotion, and you're giving space for it. You're giving kind of like you're giving kind of authenticity to the emotion, right? Because now, is the fear unreasonable? No, it's not. It makes sense to feel that way, right? Are we pathologizing the anxiety? No, we are not. It makes sense to feel that way. We're not putting it into this category of something's wrong with you. We're putting it into this category that you have a nervous system that's trying to tell you something, and that is okay, and it makes sense. So now it's kind of like, what we can do is, let's bring up our parasympathetic nervous system so that we can feel better in our body, right? And also, like, I work with horses. You guys know this by now. Anyway, and maybe we'll start doing some little videos on the horses too, because it's really fun. So when the horse, of course, is in their flight stage, you're not going to learn the horse isn't going to learn anything right then and there. Like, that's not the time to put the saddle on. That's not the time to shove them in a trailer. That's not the time to, a lot of times you have to do something medical, right? That's not just the time to, shove dewormer paste in their mouth, right? Because it's not the time to feed them, right? This happens with dogs quite a bit. You reward the state of mind, right? So if somebody's up here, an individual's up here, an animal's up here, we wait for them to calm down. They can't stay up here forever. It's expensive to be up here for the body, right? So with horses, of course, you let them left and right. You let them move, right? So round pens are really great for training on horses. Getting them, you're using sometimes a lunge line to move them left, move them right. You watch for that energy level to drop. You watch for all these key things. Human being is like that too. For managing stress and anxiousness and anxiety, you have to have some type of movement routine. You've got to walk, you've got to go for an exercise, and the exercise could be 15 minutes. It could be 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour and a half long workout routine. You can do something that's really comfortable for the nervous system for a short period of time. You have to make allowances for sleeping well. You can't stay up late and get up at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning on 6 hours of sleep and expect you to have an easier time with anxiety the next day. Good sleep starts with you building sleep habits. Like, that just has to happen, So if you have to wake up early in the morning, figure out what time you need to go to bed. And if you can't go to bed at that time, that's something we work on. That's a sleep thing. And there's plenty of things we can talk about with that, but you have to at least try. Like, of course, you're not going to want to go to bed if you don't even get into bed at 11 o'clock. You know what I mean? Or until 11 o'clock. If you wake up early in the morning, you probably have to be in bed by 9 or 10, So the human brain needs 8 hours of sleep, right? So for anxiety management, we have to walk or move or something. We have to sleep well, and we do have to pay mind to our blood sugar, right? So if we're trying to intermittent fast and we have anxiety going on, that's probably not the time to intermittent fast, right? Because remember, as our blood sugar comes down, then epinephrine, norepinephrine, and cortisol come up, and then that brings up the blood sugar. Well, I had that once where I was at work and I was trying to do intermittent fasting, and I way too busy, too many things going on at work. And I was just feeling anxious. And I told my friend, I was like, I just feel anxious, and she's like, why don't you go eat something? And I was like, oh. And I went and had some snack or whatever, and I went and I felt so much better. I was like, oh, I was anxious, and I didn't need to be intermittent fasting at that moment because it was just driving anxiousness, right? So 3 big things for managing anxiousness for a human especially is we've got to move, we've got to sleep, and we do have to mind our blood sugar and eat something that stabilizes our blood sugar, right? So let's get back to the panic state, right? So for that horse, they're calming down. Now they're licking and chewing. Now they're down here. Now you introduce all your things that you're trying to accomplish. You're introducing learning. You're introducing things to reward that frame of mind, right? Human beings. So when we're up here, when your friend is up here, overthinking, hey, let's go for a walk. Let's just go for a walk. Let's go do that. Or let's say it's really crummy outside or something. You're just not able to go outside. So this is something that we talk about in my practice. This is vagus nerve breathing. And this has come, I don't really know where this originated, probably yoga or something like that. So your vagus nerve is really stimulated when you breathe into the deep part of your lungs. That is where you can really turn that vagus nerve on. When we turn on the vagus nerve, we invite into our body GABA. That stands for gamma aminobutyric acid, and that calms us down. So this is important because, okay, let's say you're overthinking, and then where do we like to go? The internet, right? We all do it. I am scared about something, so I'm going to research something on the internet, aka Google. Researching something and Googling it are kind of different, but I digress. So what happens is that you go to try to find answers in a very scared frame of mind. You're that dog running down the street, right? And the internet is a world full of information, but some of it is bad information. Some of it's not even applicable to you. Some of it is complete bogus. Some of it's good. Some of it's very useful. Some of it's innovative. Some of it's a great new idea. Some of it's a new idea that's in the process of being discussed, right? If we think of the scientific method, one of the most important parts of the scientific method is actually the dialogue between all your buddies, all your colleagues and stuff. Peer review, that's very, very important part of the scientific method. So if we've got a piece of information that we see and it's not really been peer reviewed, peer evaluated, then it really might not have a fair shake. And it might be a really good idea, but a lot of times we're still learning. There's a lot of things that we're still learning. The person in the fear brain going to the internet trying to find information is looking for certainty, right? Because if I have certainty, now I feel better. Well, what if the answer to this problem is I don't know? That feels really scary, doesn't it? When I don't know is the answer to something. Oh my goodness sakes, that's hard. And I get it. We don't want to sit in uncertainty and we don't want to sit in fear. Those are things that are really, really hard. It feels like you're just hanging on for dear life. And we're like, I don't know, just hang out here for a while. I get it. That feels really, really intense. But think about it this way. If we're in fear brain, we're not in thinking brain, right? Think of my horse. When they're up here in their flight brain, that's not the time when I introduce a saddle, right? I'll get bucked off. Human being too. I need to calm my brain down so that I can think clearly, right? I need to go for a walk so I can think clearly. I need to maybe meditate so I can think clearly, right? So catch yourself being the scared dog running down the street. So, and we all do this with the internet. We go and we research. We find the questionable information. We might find weird information. We might find things that's just feeding an internal fear, right? So when we get into the parasympathetic brain, vagus nerve breathing is helpful for that. And let's talk about that. Typically, you can do this by counting. So you're going to count how long it takes you to take a big, deep breath. It's usually 4 or 5 seconds. So we'll do it together. Okay, ready? Breathe in. There, about 5 seconds. And then you kind of hold it for a couple of counts. And then you breathe out for double the amount of time it took you to breathe in. So and then hold that for a couple seconds and then breathe in, right? So you're breathing in, stimulating the vagus nerve, holding it for a couple counts even, breathing out, stimulating the vagus nerve, holding it for a couple counts. Doing that, and you can kind of get into that routine. Like maybe you do this 9 times every hour. You do this until you start feeling calmer. A lot of times you'll start to yawn. Yawning is great. We're making yawning, it's not rude to yawn. It's lovely to yawn. Yawning means I'm in my parasympathetic. Let's say I'm teaching a class and all the students are yawning. It's probably good. Probably means you're in your thinking brain. You're in a relaxation brain. We are now in, it doesn't mean you're going to fall asleep. Maybe it does. But if you fall asleep, we'll wake you up. It's fine. So, what it does mean is like I'm getting more relaxed. So now I can actually critically think. I can be creative. I can actually explore a thought better because the sympathetic nervous system is just triggering. And it is useful. Like it does promote recall and diligence and like catching things, but also it kind of does the opposite as well. It does this kind of like, it's unreasonable. It's very much hard to, it cuts off our listening, right? So in our way to actually like process information, synthesize information, read information, that comes from more of a parasympathetic tone. So now let's say I'm going to go research something. I'm going to take a couple big deep breaths and I'm really going to slow down and I'm going to read things from this calm frame of mind. Maybe I'll go for a little walk first and deep breathe, and then I'll go ahead and read this paper, right? Read this article, read this whatever. And therefore I'm now not the dog running down the street, right? I'm now in a calm frame of mind where I can kind of not be so triggered and I can kind of arrive at choices better, or I can kind of start to discover what's going on and start the learning process, right? And be more comfortable with the curiosity. And that's where when the answer is, I don't know, it doesn't mean we're not trying to think about what things are. Now we're trying to understand, we're trying to stay curious, and we're trying to kind of think through something, okay? So that is, I hope, a useful tidbit for y'all. And there's a lot of other breathing techniques. This is just one that I've learned over the years. Do one that works for you. I tried box breathing. I like that one too, because that one is kind of similar to this type of breathing style. But anything where you're getting into the lower part of the lungs and you're changing your nervous system. Now, I mean, like if you are full on up here, anxious mode, anxiety, it's like you feel like you're on fire and we're like, just breathe. I get it. That may not be enough, but it doesn't mean to stop trying. That's the bike you have to learn to ride, is you have to do breathing in addition to maybe up here you're going to take something like, oh gosh, L-theanine, methylfolate. You can take GABA. Maybe that's where maybe you need a medication for anxiety, and that's okay. But don't rely on that. So this solution isn't always going to be in that bottle, right? So you do have to then power up your ability to handle your parasympathetic tone, because that's where eventually it will be enough, right? Maybe at this particular moment, that's not enough and you need additional help, and that's okay. But still, you need to be working at the breathing techniques, because if you don't ever ride that bike and learn that skill and only, use what we're calling a kind of a band-aid, that will work until it won't. It'll work for a while, and then one day it won't work. You'll always outcompete that thing. But, as long as you are breathing, you have the ability to control your nervous system. It does take commitment and training and learning. I mean, I've had points too where I feel like I couldn't take a big deep breath, and maybe my big deep breath was really shallow, but I still kept at it. And throughout the day, there's my big deep breath. Okay, there it is. You know what I mean? It just kept, you just had to keep at it and not give up, and know that it's something that it's a process, So yeah, I hope that kind of helps you all, especially during this kind of busy season. And I just noticed that everybody's a little bit jazzed up and for lots of good reasons. We're not going to say that somebody, if somebody's in that overthinking, overanalyzing way, remember they have reasons to be there. They have an experience that got them there. They probably have good reason to be afraid. So we're not going to devalue that. That's not that person just being that way, or that's just how they are. If that is how they are, they got there for some reason, And so in medicine, we always talk about psychosomatic kind of things, and that's where like the sympathetic nervous system might be easily triggered by things that are kind of benign. There's a very famous case study of a woman who was deathly allergic to roses, right? Anyway, she walks into a room with very fake but realistic looking roses, and then she has her anaphylactic reaction, right? That's a psychosomatic reaction. It's not to say, oh, look at her, it's to say that's real. The brain, no, it's real for the body. So it is to treat it like it's real and to understand how real it is, but also to understand that the parasympathetic tone really, really needs to be at that party regulating things, because that's where you give people power so that they can maneuver differently, right? That's the empowering part of the nervous system. So in psychosomatic situations, you realize that, okay, that person's really dominated by their sympathetic tone, and their parasympathetic is very depleted. So we have to do a lot for that. Breathing is the first thing. So it's very interesting, right? Anyway, so go out there and breathe. And yeah, we'll probably try to talk about something else next week. All right, take care.